You're listening to the Darius Daniels Podcast.
Well, what's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Darius Daniels Podcast. Conversations on faith, life, and culture for your transformation. We hope this show provides you with edutainment, education, and entertainment at the same time. And I believe today's show is going to be just that. You know what we're talking about? We're going to help you stop overthinking. I've got an amazing interview with Jon Acuff, and he's going to give you some keys to take your life and your mind to the next level. Stay tuned. Buckle up. It's coming up next, right here on the Darius Daniels Podcast. Well, what's up? What's up? What's up? What does ET say? What up? What up? What up?
Mm-hmm. I thought you was about to do
It's
Martin.
your boy. I thought it was too.
What up? What up? What up? It's your boy ET.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how y'all doing.
energy is crazy.
how y'all doing today?
Do you know
My
Martin
name is
something?
Darius Daniels. I'm acting like I'm ET. What do you say?
Okay. I thought you knew Martin's, like when he does, what's up?
Oh,
What's up?
yeah. Martin's one of my favorite shows.
Man.
Oh, really? You like Martin?
Oh,
Do
100%.
you still watch it like right now?
I
when
haven't
it comes
watched it
on?
recently, but I've got some episodes that I purchased years ago on iTunes.
Yeah.
And I think I got almost all the seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great show. I hate it how it ended.
Classic.
Yeah, it was. I remember I was looking on Twitter. I'm always looking at stuff on social media, but I remember on Twitter, there was a debate where people were debating between which season was the best season. And I don't know because I watched it, but I didn't watch it like that to know. And people were going in. I mean, that
I like
Twitter
some of the
thing
earlier seasons.
Yeah, the earlier seasons were really good.
Yeah, I like some of the earlier
I think
seasons.
pre-marriage were like the best seasons.
It was because I feel like the relationship dynamics,
yeah.
the relationship dynamics helped make the show too.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Gina was key and critical to that
Yeah,
show.
she
And
was.
but you know, it's weird because I don't know, it's almost kind of scary when you say pre-marriage, you
Oh,
felt like the show's
yeah.
better.
Yeah.
You know, some people feel that way
That-
about relationships for real though.
But
yeah,
you know what? I thought so. No, but
No,
I was
I'm-
gonna say,
I'm
like,
serious.
But I thought like that before I was even engaged. But actually, before you even have titles, I feel like before you say we're exclusively dating, I feel like everything is wonderful, right?
Really?
Yeah, and then it's all of a sudden it's like the boy's mine, the girl is mine.
Oh, you know what?
it's like-
That reminds me.
Yeah.
There was something I put up on my Insta story a couple of weeks ago, and it was a post from someone on Twitter, and she said, "Women birthing children, being the primary caregiver, working full time, doing housework, and splitting the bills doesn't sound like equality to me." And so I put that up on my Insta story, and I asked people, "What are your thoughts on this?" And I got like over 75 responses from men and women. So, Dakari, I'm gonna ask you first.
Why
Can I
do you
ask
have that?
Because you really over there like shaking your head like, oh, okay.
Yo, I think we need to. I want to circle back to that, but I want to backtrack again
Oh wait,
because I can't believe you just let Dakari say that
What did he say?
and you didn't respond. He said
I must have missed
he
it.
felt like that that relationships are better pre-title and pre-marriage.
Yeah.
I don't know about the pre-marriage.
Not the
part.
pre-marriage, okay, but pre-marriage is the title.
But before you say, because I think a lot of it is we're courting, we're dating, we're locked into, and some of it is like really, we have a mask on anyway, right? A lot of times when we're doing this, so it's like, you're not really showing everything. But once you get that title, you showing your cards. You're like, you went from Clark Kent to Superman real quick.
Or
You get
reverse.
real
Or reverse.
comfortable.
Yeah, Superman and Clark Kent.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I don't think I think I agree to a certain extent.
Wow.
Because you put a title on there, man, things get a little rocky a little bit. Depending on, where you are.
the
and
text
your-
messages,
Yeah,
increase.
Or
Yeah.
they decrease. Because I saw
decrease,
something where
yeah.
people like, you get in a relationship, a guy always sending a woman those good morning, babe, good morning, love, or whatever. You get in a relationship with them, they just stop automatically.
Hey, I want to hear what our listeners think about this. You guys need to email us or DM us something.
I'm going to drop something. I'm gonna drop something somewhere. You got to drop something on your page. We need y'all to comment. We
because I actually thought. So I'm not surprised that I wanted to push the car there because I'm not surprised to hear a man say that because I hear men say that all the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not surprised to hear you say, Chassie, I was surprised to hear you agree.
Yeah.
Not you specifically, but I'm just saying I generally hear that from men.
Yeah.
It's like a commitment phobia, not because they're afraid to commit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the way it's interpreted.
That's exactly how it's interpreted.
But it's not a commitment phobia because they're afraid to commit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a commitment phobia because of what often happens on the other side of that commitment.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, it's great on this side.
Yeah.
And it's like
It's like
you
the
commit and it's
expectation
like,
went up.
I don't want that.
Yeah, it's like they pulled out the other part of the journal. You know,
Yeah.
the pre-title.
Or not even that the expectation goes up. It's almost like they feel like the quality of the relationship or what they had goes down.
Yeah, and I think that's why I said I can agree. Like when the title comes in, like
I
it may
get it,
not be a commitment phobia for the men, but for us, we see. Well, I'm just speaking for me as a woman. Sometimes you can see you think the man has a commitment phobia, and it's like everything starts to change. It's like you weren't doing that pre-title. Like you were this whole different person. So it's like going back to what he was saying, that mask goes on. And so you were doing everything to get the woman. But now that you have the woman, it's like those things.
Let's talk about that. No, because I could rattle off a list. Now this is not my experience, but no, it's not my experience. This is not my experience. But I could rattle off a list of the things I've heard men say that change after. But I'd like to hear what are some of the things that change that men like stop doing after the commitment.
They get very comfortable. So it's like the effort that you were putting into dating the woman, the pursuit, all of that kind of changed. Because it's like, we feel like, again, this is just me speaking. I don't know how other women feel. But I've experienced in relationships where a man is like, oh, okay, we have this title, whatever. And then everything he was doing prior to then, so maybe it was the amount of time he was calling, the quality of time we were spending together, all of those things, it just kind of shifts.
Wow.
And that's why we feel like men have commitment issues, because it's like, how did you go from here to here? And it's like, what changed? It was the title. Or if it's a pre-title thing, like men are afraid to put a title on something because they think that things are going to change. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Dakari?
Why are you smiling?
Because I wish we could do this. I wish this was like a faith-based podcast. We could really have another conversation.
Yeah. But it is.
But
it is.
When this is over, guys.
But I get what you. I'm picking up what you're putting down because things change. A lot changes.
Because I think it works on both sides. You know, like you said, you hear a lot from a male, but I like what Chassie said. There are some things that, like, I really wish you would name them. Like, I really wish you would call him. I mean, you said something, but it was kind of surface. You know, like,
what?
I felt like, you were clear to me.
It's a faith-based podcast.
Yeah. No, but I feel like you were clear to me. Pursuit and calling and
what are we
quality
pursuing,
time.
Though,
I thought about that too. It's kind of,
It's like, so if you're pursuing the woman, right? So if you're doing these things to like get her.
To name them.
So like, but that's like the dating. That's putting time in. That's the attention. That's doing all, like really, really putting that effort in. When you're in the relationship, it's like, all right, now there's another level to that. So it's like, I don't want to say the word maintaining because I don't like the way that sounds, but you have to keep it up. Like you have to continue dating. Like so dating doesn't stop.
We went from going to restaurants to now just Netflix. Like I'm saying,
exactly.
I'm talking about examples. You gotta tell me, you know,
never leaving the house.
Never leaving the house.
Yeah,
like, we got lazy. We stopped working out.
Exactly. Y'all start working out.
But I'm just saying.
Okay.
He's giving He hasn't stopped. He's on the Peloton.
Yeah. And we know PD paying the rent every day.
Right.
He even got people sending him to my rent due.
Yeah, I paid the rent this morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. But it's just little stuff like that. And it's like, you know, they send flowers. Women may not get flowers anymore. You know, lunch dates. Oh, I gotta do this.
So, like, okay. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be controversial.
Yes.
And y'all, Dakari's trying to talk me into doing this men's show that I think would actually get me canceled.
It's not going to get you canceled.
But this I know this might be more pertinent for a show like that. But This is just a question. So I don't want anybody to get offended. It's just a question. It's a sincere question. You don't got to say that like 4 times for people nowadays.
We haven't got any emails, you guys.
But we might on this one, so I want to reiterate this. It's just a question. And here's the question. What happens that causes things to drop off?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
From both man and woman.
I'm just saying, let's go with men right now, because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So if what you're saying, Chastity, is true, is there something else happening that's contributing to
potentially
the male dropping off?
Potentially.
Because I don't know, but I think sometimes the idea is it's just the man has me now.
Yes.
And so he's just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't know if that's true or not, but I do feel like there can be other factors
absolutely
that demotivate him.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. From a woman, and a man, honestly. But I think for me, so I'm gonna just keep it real. I hope I don't get canceled. I feel like it's like I'm not Steve Harvey, get all the things out there. Like some women, they kind of stop doing certain things. And men, you have to keep them motivated. You have to keep them encouraged. Like somewhere I heard it, and I don't know if this is true or not. Y'all can answer this, but it's like men are hunters. Is that true? Like,
yeah, I've heard that. I just don't know if that's true in terms of like the excitement for the man is the pursuit. I mean, there's so that once he's captured, I don't like the imagery, but once he's got the relationship and got the girl, he's not as motivated anymore. There might be some truth to that. I just don't think, if we're going to be fair, which we try to be on this podcast, I don't think that's the only reason some of those things drop off.
No, there are
with
things
men
that happen. I think it's things from women that women do. Because just as well as a man can wear a mask, women wear masks too. Women get comfortable too. I'm not one of those double standard type people. Like, I'm like, okay, the same thing that men probably do, women do it too.
But you know what? And you're really good at this. We talk a lot about relationships just in general. Mm-hmm. But I think we don't have real conversations about what it means to be intimate. And I'm not talking about in a physical space. I'm talking about what are our expectations if we connect, right? Mm-hmm. Like what do we want, our goals, our life plan together once we connect. And so what happens is you have this image in your mind. I have this image, or not even image, I have these expectations maybe. Mm-hmm. I want to use that word. I want to use expectations. You have to talk about those things. Right? Hey, I think A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Mm-hmm. Or I like blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Do you like blah, 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 blah? Or
I don't like blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
And then I may ask, are you willing to learn blah, 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 blah? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, I'm just saying, like, are these, you know, I mean.
No, I get it. Yeah. I get it. I do think, though, some of these expectations are like, they're shaped by a number of different things. Like they might be shaped by who you're around and what relationships you see. I think even some negative expectations. So like part of the commitment phobia we see with men is a result of how committed relationships and marriage is portrayed. Yep. Like if you're gonna watch a show, it's highly unlikely that in the show, a man's gonna see a show that shows like marriage. Mm-hmm. It's highly unlikely that a man's gonna see a relationship on that show that motivates him to want that.
Right. I agree.
It's just portrayed in a way where it's like, why would he want that? Yeah. And it doesn't mean he's afraid of commitment. It's just like, you might see a show and a man's like, he's being, and this is something that I often have to help people of different races with, like self-deprecating humor. Like that might work in certain spaces, but it doesn't really help men of color. Mm-hmm. And the reason is they're already dealing with so much criticism and all those kinds of things. Like they need to be affirmed and built up, right? Mm-hmm. But when you see some of this stuff on television, on the movies, it's like, man, he's being dogged. He's, being sometimes disrespected. He's intimacy. Let's keep it a buck. Intimacy is treated like a reward for good behavior. Right. It's like, so you've been a good boy, so you don't have to sleep on the couch tonight. Right. That's what's being portrayed a lot of times in media. And I'm just saying, those kind of things, they don't motivate a guy to say, and sometimes, I want that.
And sometimes the guy is just really too corny on television. I wouldn't do this. I was like, I don't even see myself. That's why I love Martin, though. Even down to the careers, right? Mm-hmm. It's either they're really successful or they're poor. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, especially our shows, right? So it's like, Martin was a grinder.
Yeah.
Dude was on the radio. Him and Stan was going at it. He was
Yes.
like, getting a raise.
Yeah.
It made sense, right? But Chad
Wow.
said, your face was just, you was just.
Yeah, I feel like she's outnumbered on this. Outnumbered, and so we probably gonna get emails about that. Y'all double teamed her. No, I'm just asking questions.
Yeah.
I'm asking questions because I feel like it's almost like one-sided.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned this tweet about the. To me, that goes back to like gender roles.
Mm-hmm.
And have we had a conversation about this off camera before?
think we
Where I
definitely
feel
have.
like
We always have conversations
yeah,
on camera.
where I feel like guys, it's easy for, I don't mean it's in a negative way, but it's easy for us as guys to get confused. We get confused easy. And so sometimes
y'all
I feel
are the
like,
ones who are confusing us.
No, I
but
think
then
we
y'all
are.
get confused?
I think men, yes, I think we're very confusing,
Mm-hmm.
but that's because we're confused.
No, it's not.
But what I'm saying is, I feel like sometimes what do you think? There are mixed messages about gender roles.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's like, no, there are no gender roles. So like, I'm a Christian, so I believe in some biblical roles, but like societal gender roles, I think those are negotiable. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's just cultural. So you don't have an obligation to fit in a certain role. Like I teach people that are at church, who should cook? I'm like, whoever cooked the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's none in the Bible says thou shalt cook. So, but I do feel like on one end, it's like, no, we reject all these societal gender roles. Like we align with what the Bible says, but we reject societal gender roles. But then, remember when we did the relational intelligence, the dating edition?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like, when I talked about like a woman expressing interest, then I got all of this stuff like, but no, let a man be a man.
Right.
I'm like, wait a
Right.
minute. So that's a
Yeah.
gender role though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So either we have gender roles or we don't have gender roles. So I feel
Yeah.
like, I don't know, that tweet's a little confusing for me because
It
it's
is.
What's confusing about it again? No, break it down a little bit because you didn't say enough for me. What is confusing? what is
the
confusing?
energy is
Let-
different in the room.
Hold on, guys. Let me read this again just in case because we had a lot of conversation. And so I might need to just kind of,
Okay.
read this again.
Got
It
it.
said women birthing children,
Mm-hmm.
being the primary caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
working full time, doing housework, and splitting the bills doesn't sound like equality to me.
So listen to me though. And then I could say the father taking the kids to extracurricular activities, helping with some of the housework, doing things like outside chores, helping with so
I'm
he may
just
not be
trying to
there
keep a
the most of the
straight
time
face.
with the kids, but helping
I'm just
the
trying to keep
kids.
a straight face.
No,
because
I'm saying
it seems like you're struggling to get all of this out.
I'm not. I'm not at all. What I'm saying is, it's almost like the assumption is if a woman is doing that, the man has nothing to do with any of that. And my question is like, yo, who did you marry?
Yeah.
I was-
That's
No,
what
I'm
was
not-
saying.
I don't mean
See,
to like,
households are different.
You doing all of that?
Or, yeah.
That's
Mhm.
that's what I'm
And he's
getting
you
at.
know
adding
what?
no value?
I also think it's a couple of things, a couple of factors here that are not included here. So we are like really just taking this thing at face value because we don't know what's going on. Households are different. And then also, that's also a scenario. I don't want to say it's outdated because that's still some people's like scenario where women are like stay-at-home moms and the dad goes out and work and whatever. But yeah, I think it's different for each household. Like
Yep.
especially
No, here's what I'm saying, Dakar. If a woman is doing all of that
Yeah.
that she mentioned in that tweet
Mhm.
with no support from a spouse,
It might be a single household.
that's, but she mentioned splitting the bills.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, to me, I would be like, yes, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like beyond the bills. Like
Yeah.
even if you weren't splitting the bills, I would still be
That's
like,
not equality.
that's
Yeah, no, it's not
that's an
equality.
issue.
Yeah.
That's gonna bankrupt
Yeah.
the relationship.
If let me just give my preference. If I'm married and I'm living with someone, I'm probably not doing all of that. We're splitting something.
I
But
would
those
hope so.
bills,
And
but
I
those
think
bills,
and I think the root of that.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Go ahead. Please finish. But the bills.
I don't really know. We're gonna have to talk about that. We
And
have
that's what
to
I'm ready to
evaluate
say.
that one.
I think at the heart of that was just to set up everything.
Yeah, that was
just to
yeah.
say, I don't want to split bills. That's
basically what
exactly
sis was
that's really
saying.
what it is.
That's
That
exactly
sweetheart
what sis was
she
saying.
don't want to split the bills.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the conversation that I'm willing to have.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I think we have to have a
100%.
conversation about what that looks like.
100%.
Because it looks like different for each household.
Each household.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that'll be for.
Are you splitting bills when y'all get married?
Am I splitting bills when I get married?
She's probably gonna listen to this and watch.
Let me say this. This is what I genuinely believe. And
Don't get in trouble.
I'm not gonna get in trouble because this is my truth.
Yo, this is really
It's a
the whole
safe place.
It
podcast,
is a
y'all.
whole
We got
podcast.
this. This is interesting.
No,
We need to do a whole show on this.
We do.
And
We will.
let me tell you something. My perspective may be jaded, right? Let me say it like this. I grew up watching my grandfather take care of my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
That is my background. He paid the bills. He worked. He did X, Y, and Z. So for me, I take on that responsibility to cover my house in that way.
Yeah.
If my wife, my soon-to-be wife, if she decides that she wants to assist in that, she can. But that is not a requirement, nor am I expecting that. I'd be like, hey, put money aside for vacation, etc.
Yeah.
That's how outside of bill paying, like.
But this is what I'm saying though.
Yeah.
I'm saying if someone makes that like a requirement,
Right.
or like, I'm saying that's their right. I feel like you can decide, I don't want to marry somebody who's not going to do that. I think that's fine. That's their right. I'm just saying that is a gender role though. That is assigning a gender role. And if it works that way, it's got to work the other way too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think you're going to get an email asking you about the Bible verse about men being providers. No, that I feel in my spirit.
What about the woman being a helpmate?
So here it is.
She said she
now,
helpmate
when the
in
Bible,
house.
this is really going to be controversial. When the Bible says that, it's talking about here's what Paul says: a man who does not provide, because this the bishop now.
Yes,
a man who does not provide for his household is worse than an unbeliever.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think there's like an ethical expectation that a man is going to be willing to make sure that his family is provided for.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Now, how that fleshes itself out, that depends on the couple.
Mm-hmm.
So me, I'm kind of like, I come from Darius.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like what I saw. That's my background. And so for me, and I'm a hustler. So it's like, we're going to get it.
Yeah, period.
My family's going to be all right. And, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to work.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to work, you don't have to work.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my philosophy. That's my perspective. And I'm going to go get it like that so that you don't have to be in that situation. I just don't think you can say somebody's wrong.
Right.
No.
If they don't have my approach on that.
Right. Exactly.
Someone might say, well, I'm not in that position to be able to. We got to split these bills. You know?
Yeah.
We got to split these bills.
Or leads to people overthinking.
They overthinking everything.
Overthink relationships.
Yeah.
Overthink.
Yes. Great segue, Chastity Nicole.
Because she showed up overthought that just to say she don't want to pay bills.
I think we overtalked this session, but I think the people enjoy it.
This.
Yeah. But I really think you're right. Part of this, it is overthinking.
Yeah.
And it's something that a lot of people do. I just did this interview. You're about to hear it. I believe, straight up, this is one of the best podcast interviews I've ever done.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Period. Mm-hmm. What the value that's about to be added to people's life right here is like, it's indescribable. So I did this interview with Jon Acuff. And we talked about this concept in this book that he released called Soundtracks. And it's Solutions to Overthinking. And they did some research. He talks about it in the interview where they interviewed thousands of people. And it's like almost everybody, it's like 90-something% of the people they interviewed said they struggle with overthinking.
Wow.
And it's not just like thinking too much. It's like thinking about the wrong things.
Yeah, that's good.
And it becomes a soundtrack that you play over and over in your mind. And so he gives you some tips and tools on how to address it. It's going to be incredible. And after you hear this, you're going to want to follow everything Jon's doing. So I want you to stay tuned. My interview with Jon Acuff is coming up next, right here on the Darius Daniels podcast. Jon, my man, welcome to the Darius Daniels podcast. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, dude. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. What part of the world are you in right now?
I'm in Nashville. That's been my answer for about 14 months straight, actually. So I'm in Nashville. I got it memorized. I got that answer memorized.
Yeah. So has that been an adjustment for you? Because you traveled, a bit at least, speaking and with your books. And how's that adjustment been?
Not well, initially. It's so I would say in March of 2020, I remember texting a friend. I was like, I think the first half of this year is going to be tough for some people. And not like first half, I said, we'd be like, that's a wrap. It's July, folks, wrap it up. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd say 70% of my job is public speaking. So that just got put on pause. So I spent like 2 grumpy months being like, I can't believe it. Like, and then, I talk about this idea called soundtracks, about the thoughts you play in your head. And so I came up with a new soundtrack, which was I can pine or I can plan. I can pine the old way and be mad it's not there and be regretful and all that, or I can plan the current way. So I was like, okay, that's enough pining. I'm going to plan. I'm going to figure out virtual events. I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to work on video. Like I'm going to try to lean into some new stuff. I'm going to try some online challenges. So that's kind of where I know we're tired of this word, but I just had to do what everybody did, which was pivot.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think that's amazing. And I also think that that's a perfect segue to what I want to talk about today. We were talking a little bit before we started this recording, and I was just telling you there's so much of your work that's impacted my life and so many different things I wanted to talk to you about. But when I was reading just the idea and the concept of this it's actually upcoming book, Soundtracks. I think it'll actually be, it's out. It's going to be out now by the time people hear this, but Soundtracks, the Surprising Solution to Overthinking. I was like, pause. This right here is something I really want to lean in. So let's talk a little bit about that. Obviously, was overthinking a personal struggle for you? Was it something some trend you observed in the life of people? What made you start exploring this idea of overthinking?
Yeah. So when I write a book or when I start a new speech, or when I launch anything, I always look for 3 things. And I tell every leader, like, if you're going to create something new, these are 3 things that I think are helpful. One is a personal connection. Am I personally connected to the content? With a book, at least, you're going to talk about this idea for years and years and years. Do you have a personal connection? The second thing is, the people need it. Are you seeing a need? The conversations you're having online, in the trenches you're in with other people, do you see a need? And the third is there a hole in the marketplace? Is it being underserved in a way that you could uniquely serve it? So with overthinking, it's definitely something I deal with. It's something I learned a lot about. In 2008, I had some lessons I learned that I had practiced over the years again and again and again. I then asked 10,000 people. I've got a researcher named Mike Peasley, who's a PhD, and we asked 10,000 people if they struggle with overthinking, and 99.5% of people said yes. So as a general rule, if 99.5% of people raise their hand about a topic, you should go explore that topic. And then the third thing, I went to the marketplace, and there's some great books about overthinking, but a lot of them say, stop it, stop it, stop it. And my view was, why would I ever turn off this amazing thinking machine? I'm really good at thinking. What if I just fed it with things that were good? What if I fed it with thoughts that pushed me forward, not pulled me back? And so that's my Venn diagram of an idea. And if I can find 3 things that overlap and I can find that little small part in the middle, that's when I work on something.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Listen, I'm incredibly surprised that 99.5% of the people you guys surveyed struggle with this. I think, I don't know. I felt like I was a bit of an anomaly. So that's very comforting to know that I'm struggling.
See, that's part of the lie of overthinking. Everybody thinks they're the only one. So I always say, like, fear fears community. And so even just knowing I'm not the only one. So like, I'll do online challenges sometimes, and I'll say, as I'm teaching, I'll say, throw a yes in those comments if you've ever struggled with this. And I want them to do that so that other people that are taking the challenge can see a flood of yeses. Because right there, sometimes that's one of the earliest gifts you give when you're trying to grow is, oh, I'm not the only one. There's other people. So for me, that was really interesting. I think there's people that struggle with it more maybe than other people, but that was before 2020. Like I've said to you, like 2020 is catnip for overthinking. Like we all had, like, think about it this way, Darius. So the other day, somebody went to shake my hand, and right before they shook my hand, I thought, Should I give him a fist bump? Should I give him the elbow? Like, is it rude to say no? What if I shake his hand, but then I stick my whole arm into a vat, like a gallon of hand sanitizer and say, excuse me, sir, while I wash off the deadly global pandemic you just tried to murder me with? Like, and then I started looking around. Are other people shaking hands here? Is this a handshake in place? Is that a political statement? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Dude, 2 years ago, you know what I thought when somebody tried to shake my hand? I thought, I'll shake their hand. Now everything's a thing.
Yeah.
And so every little thing has room for overthinking. And so in my opinion, it's an epidemic right now, which was, why I'm really excited about the timing of the book.
Yeah, I agree 1,000% spot on there. So here's a question I have. I'm assuming that obviously there are some adverse implications of overthinking. It negatively impacts our life in some way. Now, for many of us, I think our initial observation is like, yo, this makes me feel bad. It affects my mood. It affects me emotionally. What are some of those, some of the negative implications of overthinking? How does it?
Yeah, so I mean, right out of the gate,
life?
It steals time, creativity, and productivity. Like you give hours of your life that you don't have a lot to spare of to something that's just spinning you. Like no one would say today, the most important thing I'm going to focus on is something dumb I said in a meeting 3 years ago. But then they'll spend 20 minutes going, oh, I can't believe I said that. Why did I say that? Like that 20 minutes is gone. Like I meet people all the time that, for instance, will go, oh, you write books. I want to write a book too. And I'll go, that's great. And they go, yeah, I've been working on one for 7 years. I know they're stuck. Like I know there's not a book that should take you 7 years, 10 years. And so that's the first thing I'd say is it steals time. It steals creativity because you use the best parts of your imagination overthinking something. And then it does leave you feeling drained and inadequate. That was something that came up in the research we did was people said they felt drained and inadequate. The shorthand is I always say, we didn't find a single research participant who said, my real problem is I overthink compliments. Like I'm always overthinking compliments about myself. It's a real issue. Like I never met a mom who was like, I just keep thinking I'm such a great mom. That's my problem. Can you help me think less of myself? If anything, it was they had a broken soundtrack that was on repeat and needed to kind of replace that. That's what the 3 R's in the book that I kind of talk through people with are retire a broken soundtrack. So identify something that's broken, retire it. Number 2, replace it with a new one. And then repeat that new one so often that it becomes as automatic as the old one. So I like to take big, complex, like overthinking is a fuzzy kind of, it can get real holistic and candly. Like I just like go, no. There's 3 things we're going to do. We're going to retire the broken ones. We're going to replace them with new ones. We're going to repeat those new ones so often they become automatic. That's what I try to help people with.
Amazing. So you mentioned the word soundtracks, and obviously that's the essence. It's kind of the essence of the book that you wrote, at least. And so talk to me a little bit about that concept. I mean, you just mentioned it briefly, but when you say soundtrack, like what do you mean by that?
So, I mean, that's my phrase for a repetitive thought. So some people say a repetitive thought is like a leaf going down in the river of your life. So some people say it's a cloud in the sky, it's a car on the highway. For me, a soundtrack is a repetitive thought that you hear. So I like that phrase because a soundtrack can change the entire scene. So imagine a movie. You see a movie and it's this beautiful suburban house and it's a sunny day and there's kids playing on the street and then they play an ominous soundtrack. Suddenly you go, don't go in that house. Like it's too quiet. It's a setup. Something's really wrong. They play a normal, peaceful song. You go, oh, it's a rom-com. Like that's what this movie is. This something silly is about to happen. Yeah. The music changes everything. And so my argument there is your personal soundtracks, those things you hear change everything. And the easiest way to see an example of one is think about something you want to do. And it can be, I want to ask for a raise. I want to start my own podcast. I want to write a book. Wow. I want to give a speech someday. Like I've been giving announcements at church. I want to give an actual sermon. Think about something you desire to do and then listen. What's the first thing you hear inside? And the phrase I use is every reaction is an education. Your reaction to things you want to do is an education. And a lot of times we're so busy, we're moving so much, or they're so far in the background because we're used to them, we don't hear them. But what if you said, like, the greatest power in my mind is that once you realize you can control your thoughts, it changes your actions, which changes your results. Like most people don't understand they have the permission and the ability to choose what they think, which sets up new actions, which leads to new results. This isn't a thinking book. Like if you walk away with it and you get a new thought, that's fine, but that's not the goal. The goal is I want to help you write some new thoughts that create new actions, that create new results. And once you plug into that, it gets really, really fun.
Yeah. I'm listening to you and I can tell this is something that is just like a personal passion of yours. I can see you've internalized some of the concepts. So how did you get here? And this is what I mean by that. How did you get to the point where, I guess through partnership and research and through your own personal journey, how do you get to the point where you could say, like, with confidence? Because me, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about the person who would say, well, no, I can't control my thoughts. I wish I could control my thoughts, but I can't. Like, how did you get to the place where you believe that, man, my thoughts are actually controllable?
Well, I mean, the big thing. So in 2008, I was in Atlanta. I was probably 15 miles, maybe even 15 minutes from where you're sitting right now in Atlanta. And I have a blog that I'm starting to write, and I've hit a ceiling in my career. There's nowhere else to go. I'm at the top of a ladder, as it were. I was a senior content designer for a company, and there was no super duper senior content designer position above that. I was in my early 30s and I was stuck. And an event planner from Oklahoma, from Edmond, Oklahoma, said, "Hey, you want to come speak at our event?" And I didn't even know that was a thing people got paid for. I didn't know that was a career. I didn't know anything. All I had was one thought. I think I can do this. I had one tiny little baby of a soundtrack. I think I can do this. And that was the start of me going, the thoughts you choose to listen to and then feed with action turn into results. I had no evidence that I could do it. I had no proof. No one else thought that. And I just had this one thought. And I said, okay, I'm going to add some overwhelming action to this. And I'm going to see what happens. And that thought started to change my life. It moved me to Nashville. It helped me hit the New York Times bestsellers list. It carried me through so many ups and downs as I continued to go, I think I can do this. I think I can do this. And not only do I think I can do it, I'm going to add a bunch of actions that eventually make that thought true. And then then I get to see the results. And there were definitely ups and downs. And I don't believe people arrive. But for me, that's when I first was like, wait a second, I'm going to try on this new thought and see what happens and be faithful to it. And I write thoughts down. I mean, like soundtracks. I tell people, gather soundtracks everywhere. Like for me, I just wrote this one down today. I'm pulling it off the window that I sit by. It says, discipline is a gift you give yourself today for tomorrow. Because I got this broken soundtrack. It's like, oh, discipline is negative. It's sacrifice. And I'm like, no, man, it's a gift. It's a gift you give yourself today for tomorrow. So I don't believe that yet. Like I'm a big believer in what the Zig Ziglar says, like telling the truth in advance. I know this is true, but I've listened to a negative soundtrack, a broken soundtrack of avoid discipline. Discipline is restrictive. You're too creative. It'll hem you in. But now I'm in my mid 40s. I'm like, man, the times I'm disciplined, like things go better. Life goes better. Like I might not get that initial, like immediate gratification, but the long term is so much better. So I say, okay, I want to lock that in with a thought, and I'm going to put some actions around that. So the soundtrack I'm going to start with is discipline is a gift you give yourself today for tomorrow. Okay, I can jam on that. And so now I'm going to grow that. So that's where for me, just paying attention. And I'll give people three simple questions they can ask if you're curious. So don't interview every thought you have. We have too many thoughts. Who has time for that? That's exhausting. Interview the loudest soundtracks. So if you thought about, okay, what's the boombox that's the loudest? Interview the loudest ones and ask it three questions. Is it true? Is this thing I'm believing about myself, about my world, about another person, about my job, whatever, is it true? Number two, is it helpful? Does it move me forward or pull me back? And number three, is it kind? Is it kind to me about this? If I said this to a friend, would they still want to be a friend? And so if you'll ask those three questions, most people will find out, wow, I've been listening to some things that aren't true, that aren't helpful, and definitely aren't kind. What am I going to do about that? And that's where you get to figure out, I get to create new ones, and I get to write new ones, and I get to believe new ones. And this whole world opens up. Yeah.
Jon, that's amazing. I want to ask, in your own personal experience, I mean, I think some of our thought patterns are habitual, right? And then there's some evidence that like our thought patterns actually affect the brain and wiring and all these kinds of things. So could you let us inside your journey a little bit? How was it difficult to actually do, and this might not be the right word, but some of the reprogramming?
It was/is. Dr. Caroline Leaf writes about this a lot. She's a brilliant scientist.
Mhm.
And the good news for us is that we live in an age where we understand neuroplasticity, that your brain can physically change based on thoughts you have, based
Yes.
on work you do. So like previous generations didn't know that. We have neurogenesis, that you have new brain cells in the morning every day that are waiting to be told what to do.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can physically change how your brain functions. It is challenging. But the thing I always tell people is, like, give yourself grace for the change to take a little bit. I had somebody the other day, and they said, John, I'm believing soundtracks. I'm working on those. But like she said, the problem I have is like, it takes me a while. She's like, my head believes it, but my heart doesn't. What do I do with that? And I thought, isn't that true? Like, we've all been there, right? We've all said, okay, I believe this thing in my head, but what do I do? She said, do you have a soundtrack for that? And I said, I do. The soundtrack I want you to write down is the head runs, the heart walks.
Mm.
The head runs, the heart walks. Don't get frustrated when your heart takes longer to learn something that your head got to first.
Mhm.
And so that's what I would say. If somebody said to me, John, it's not working, I'd say, well, how long? Because what happens with goals is I'll meet people that say, John, this diet's not working. This exercise program's not working. I go, how long have you been doing it? And they'll say 10 days. I'll say, well, how long did it take you to gain the weight? I'll say 10 years. So you gave yourself 10 years to gain it, and you're only giving yourself 10 days to lose it. That's so unkind to yourself.
Yeah.
So what if we what if we expanded the time frame? These things do take time, but there's going to be other things where just changing the perspective. I mean, how many times, Darius, have you thought you knew a situation? You're like, I know what's going on here. I know what's going on. And then somebody gives you a detail. Somebody tells you a true soundtrack, and it shifts your whole perspective.
Sure.
And you go, oh, I didn't. So sometimes there's a single thought that unlocks an entire situation. Other times, it's kind of like every time you've touched a broken soundtrack, you've put a handle on it. Every time you think about it, you put a handle on it. So it's really easy to pick that thing up. And so it might take a little while to break some of those handles off so that you don't pick up that thought. So that's why it's easy for a negative soundtrack to play automatically in a situation. Say let's say 10 years ago, somebody took advantage of you in a business situation.
Mhm.
Somebody stole some money, they ripped you off, they did something. And you started to believe I got to be on my guard. I got to be really careful. Like everybody's trying to do this. Over time, you might have played that soundtrack 1,000 times. So you get into a business conversation, even with people you love, people you trust, people you've done business with before. And in the background, that soundtrack fires up and goes, remember, Darius, people are out to get you. You got to be careful. And it ruins that conversation. And it's easy to pick it up because you spent 10 years listening to it. So in those moments, I say, give yourself some time.
Man, that's so important, because I think we could be someone like me. I'm wired in a way where I could be overthinking how well I'm doing in trying to arrest overthinking.
Oh yeah, well, but here's the thing. Like, so even my most type A friends who pick out their clothes the night before they go to the gym to make sure they do it, very few of them pick out their soundtracks. So very few of my friends will go, I got a big business meeting coming up Thursday. Here's the 3 soundtracks I want playing, so that I'm confident and generous in that meeting. Because I know my broken ones. They're going to you don't have to find negativity. Negativity finds you. You have to search for positivity. The way I say it is, fear comes free. Faith takes work.
Mhm.
Like, those negative things are you'll never have a problem with that. No one ever goes, I think, this week I want to think about, why I'm so mad somebody didn't respond to me on text. Like, that negativity will just come up. The positive side of it, take some work, take some hustle, take some, intentionality.
No, that's incredible. You mentioned just a second ago that we know what's broken.
Yeah.
Like what soundtracks are broken, excuse me. For the person that's listening to saying, John, I don't know what soundtracks are broken. How do I find out if my soundtrack is a broken soundtrack?
Well, I mean, I think one way is in the comfort of community. And I'm not saying you need 50 friends. I'm not saying you need 10 friends, but often, Darius, we're so close to the painting, we can't tell what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're so close that we can't see it. And we need somebody 10 feet back that can go, hey, I think, you need to be smart about this. And so I think that's one of the big things is, do you have a friend that you could say to, hey, there's this thing I want to do. I feel a little stuck. What am I missing? What don't I see? And it doesn't have to be this long, heartfelt, everybody's crying conversation. Even just asking a friend that question and going, hey, I feel like I keep running into this one wall. And I don't know how to figure it out. Like, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? And then having the humility to let them say something true, not being defensive in that moment.
Yeah.
Because when you're defensive to people you've asked for advice for, they stop giving you advice. So I think a lot of it, like, I personally believe 100% self-awareness is impossible. I think we're built for community, and we need other people to carry some of our self-awareness so that they can reflect it back to us.
100%. You know, I think there's this quote I read one time. It says that the nature of deception is to be deceived. You know, like
we're the best at lying to ourselves. We're the most, like, that's why whenever you say to somebody, why did you do that? They go, I thought it would be a good idea. Like, even as you, like, nobody goes, I thought it would wreck my life. I was just trying to wreck my whole life. Like, they go, nah, I thought it would work out. Like, we can talk ourselves. The greatest salesmen in the world are ourselves. And so having somebody else that you can say, hey, here's this thing I'm thinking about doing. Here's this, you know, what do you think about that? And, like, because it's usually the thoughts that are getting in the way. Like, let's go back to like a health goal. You know where the gym is. Like, you know how to physically drive there. Like, treadmills, dude, haven't changed for like 50 years. Like, no one can be like, I would use a treadmill, but they keep changing the directions and the angles. Like, who can keep up? Like, you know how to do it. It's just you have all these thoughts that get in the way of actually doing it. So that's where I'm like, well, let's fix the thought, because that's going to free up some actions. It's going to free up some results.
Oh, man, 1,000%. And I think you're spot on there. You know, you mentioned something earlier. This is going to sound so random. I want to circle back to it, though. And you mentioned the Ziglar family. I think you mentioned Zig Ziglar. Now, Jon, I don't know if I told you this earlier. Now, I'm born and raised in Mississippi. And my wife is also born and raised from Mississippi. And we were almost like equal distance from Yazoo City, which is where Zig Ziglar was raised. You interviewed his son, I think.
Tom.
Yeah, for this book. Could you talk a little bit about like some of the lessons you learned, the value that that family added to you and to this?
Yeah, so I got to have lunch with Zig and his wife Jean and his son Tom maybe 10 or 12 years ago before he passed away. And the reason I added Zig to this book, and I didn't want to talk about positive thinking because I'm kind of a jaded, sarcastic person that grew up with like Serenity Now and like, you know, Saturday Night Live, like I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, doggone it, people like me. Yeah. But I kept bumping into leaders that I really respected, that I really admired. And if you get them off camera, if you get them off the mic and say, hey, what do you think about positive thinking? They'd go, well, I got a pep talk I give myself, or well, I've got a couple declarations, or well, and I was like, oh, dang it, I'm going to have to explore positive thinking. And so that's what I did. And I kept seeing Zig's name pop up. So I tried Zig's daily affirmations. Zig had this famous set of daily affirmations. You read them in the morning, you read them at night in front of a mirror. And I was like, this is crazy. My wife was like, don't do it in our bathroom. Do it in a guest bathroom, because I don't want to be in here when you're doing it. Like, because I need to be able to make out with you. And I don't want to. I was like, that's fine. So I tried it and it was helpful. Like, it really encouraged me. It was really helpful. So I'm a writer. So I wanted to create my own. Like, that's my thing. Most advice is a la carte. I think you need to take the pieces that work for you and remix it and play it. Like, you're the best DJ. You're the best DJ of your soundtracks. I'm not the best DJ of your soundtracks. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to remix it. I'm going to create my own. So I created my own set of what I called the new anthem. And then I called Tom and had an amazing conversation. I think it's probably one of the best chapters in the book, was just listening to him, because I kind of tried to play Stump the Ziggler. I'd be like, yeah, but what about? Yeah, but what about? And he's been doing this for 50 years. And so like one of my favorite things was, I was like, do you guys believe in fake it till you make it? And he was like, nope. And that surprised me. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, we don't, because that causes cognitive dissonance in your brain, where your brain goes, this isn't true. So his example was, he said, say you're really out of shape and you say to yourself, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm in amazing shape. Your brain goes, no, you're not, you liar. And it all falls apart. What they say, which one of Tom Ziglar's friends talked about, is, I'm getting fitter and fitter every day in every way, because that's a progress statement. Yeah. And that changes your ability. That's positive without being fake. The other thing was that I would say, well, are you just saying like ignore negative things? He's like, no, it's positive to address a negative thing. Admit it so that you can actually start to work on it. Don't obsess about the problem, but you have to admit the problem so that you can then work for a solution. The favorite thing I love that was so practical, I was like, well, what about, when something bad happens? And he goes, okay, let's take travel. My dad traveled a lot. if you travel more than twice, you're going to be delayed. You're going to have canceled flight. He goes, my dad never got mad about that because he always carried his most important work with him. So every delayed flight was an invitation to do his most important work. So like just that picture of Zig being in like the Kansas City airport because they're going to delay you in that terrible airport. Like Zig like knocking it out by a vending machine because that's all they have in that terrible airport. Like that's amazing to me. And that was such a practical thing. So the conversation was really fun. And Tom was so generous to contribute to the book.
Another question about that. So you kind of mentioned community, relationships kind of being an avenue that helps increase your self-awareness. Yep. As you are, engaging in this interview, engaging in conversations, are there things that you're learning and seeing about you? And would you be willing to share a couple of those things with us?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I write trench books. Like I wish these are books where I'm 80 and I'm like on a rocking chair whittling. I haven't made a mistake in like 40 years. Like that's not the case. And so, with conversation with, whether it's a conversation with Tom or whether it's a conversation with a friend, I keep learning. I mean, speaking of community, I have a friend named Ben. We go on a walk once a week. Like we go on like a 90-minute walk in the woods near our house, and just do life together. And so like I've learned that if I'll share honestly with him, he gets to speak honestly to me. So an example would be maybe about 6 weeks ago, I said, hey, he said, how you doing? I said, well, I'm actually kind of sad because I thought about this opportunity I missed. Like there was this big opportunity and I missed it. And I feel sad like that I did. I feel afraid that there might not be any more. I feel dumb, like I've missed my chance and everybody else would have seen the chance. And so I kind of expressed it. And he said, well, tell me this. If you had said yes to that opportunity, what would you have more of that you don't have now? And I was like, oh, that's a good question. But then he said, if you had said yes to that opportunity, would you have gone deeper into your heart or deeper into your ego? And I didn't have to spend 10 seconds thinking about that. And he said, and I said, my ego. And he said, well, that makes me sad because I don't think you would have valued this relationship and these walks and I would have missed this. And like that, I don't get that gift unless I say, I'm sad, I'm afraid, I feel worried. Like, so that to me is what I'm learning. And I wish I'd learned it earlier on in life because I didn't even know, like, until like 2 years ago, I didn't even know that we got to say, I feel sad. Like that feels like a foreign language to me. But the more I get comfortable kind of being who I'm called to be, the bigger gifts I get from my community, if I'll be vulnerable.
Jon, this has been absolutely amazing. You've dropped, this is a contemporary colloquialism, you've dropped gems.
Oh, thanks.
That means it's value. I was doing an interview a few days ago, and I was talking to someone. This is an older lady, and she lives out in Hidden Night, North Carolina, which is
Hidden Night.
Yes, that's the name of it's
That's
hidden.
a place.
It's a place, and it's hidden. It's about an hour and a half south of Charlotte, and so I was explaining to her this idea of gems, but it's just so much value, so much value. So I know that those of us who are listening are wondering, okay, not just where can I explore this idea of overthinking more, where can I connect with Jon? What else does he have going on that can add value to my life? Because there are people listening who are saying, I need more of this.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. That's super kind. I mean, I have a podcast. So if you're like, hey, I'd love to hear some more, like I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal, where it's a weekly podcast. I'm a big believer in goals. I'm a goal nerd. I say a goal is the fastest path between where you are today and where you want to be tomorrow. And I think finishing a goal feels amazing. So I love to help people finish goals. There's a reason the restaurant has the dollar bill framed behind the counter. It's not because it's a lot of money. It's because they did it. Like that dollar bill is something that matters. So I like to say the future belongs to finishers. And so if I can help people finish goals, awesome. Wow. And then if you want to check out the book, soundtracksbook.com, you can go read the first chapter. You can just grab a free copy of the first chapter. Obviously, buy it in bulk on Amazon. Like babies need shoes. Let's not play around. But yeah, and then I'm on Twitter, Twitter and Instagram, Jon Acuff. So I'm in all the places, I should say. And then I get to do a lot of stuff with Orange. So you and I have that in common, and that's something that's been an amazing part of my life for the last 7 years. So hopefully I'll see a lot of folks on Orange Tour and Orange events as we open those up in the future. Yeah,
looking forward to that. I think it was the first time I heard you speak. I mean, I've heard of you and read some of your books. That was the first time I heard you speak live. And I'm going to tell you something. which is, I think this is like really rare. Like to be able to write well and to speak well, in my experience, that's a bit of an anomaly. At least in my experience, and people do it with like equal effectiveness. And so that's something I feel like you do really well. And I want to encourage people to not just get the books, but to definitely attend events and also jump on that podcast. Jon,
well, thanks,
listen.
Darius. I appreciate that. This was fun. This one went fast.
Yeah.
The good ones go fast.
But it was great, man. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for adding value to our tribe.
Thanks, man.
Well, what did I tell you about that interview with Jon Acuff? Nothing but gems. And hopefully you got some keys, man, that are going to help you with overthinking. I know I did. And I'm really excited about this section. It's the Ask Dr. Darius section of the Darius Daniels podcast. And man, we're going to answer some questions that have come in from you. We want this to be an interactive show. So send us your questions to podcast@dariusdaniels.com. We're going to get to many of them as we can. Listen, really soon, we're going to be bringing some of you in via Zoom to answer your questions in person. It's going to be a great, great experience. We got some great questions today. We're going to start with Chastity with question number 1.
All right. This question is from Lakaya or Lakia. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but it says, I am looking for counseling or therapist, and I really don't know where to begin. Do you have some recommendations for her? And then she wants to know if she should base it on like her age, her culture, her accomplishments. Like, how does she look for it?
It's a great question. So, I mean, I don't know how to answer the question for her, but this is what I think through when I am trying to find a therapist. So, one is, it's always good if you can get some recommendations. I think that's really important. And I want to say this, it's not a judgment, but it's a reality. All therapists aren't created equal, right? It doesn't mean that they're inherently or intrinsically one's more valuable than another. It just means skill sets are different, relevance is different, and a therapist's own emotional health is different too. So it's kind of weird, like in the therapeutic and the spiritual industry, like you can go to seminaries and train. You can get training on like concepts and all of that, but there's very little in place to actually assess your own spiritual well-being.
Right.
And even though there are like some recertifications therapists have to do or whatever, I say that because like my family has some terrible experiences with some therapists that where I was like, you need to be back in therapy, you know? So recommendations help. I think that's important. So recommendations, and then the next thing is, I think it's really important, experimentation. Because some discernment comes from you trying stuff out and seeing, is this a fit?
Yeah.
Do they actually add value to my life? Can they speak to where I am? Do they have experience with people like me?
Yes.
And so some of that you aren't able to determine until you kind of have sessions with them. And so I want to give people permission to disengage.
I like that.
Yeah, John Maxwell says, if the horse is dead, dismount. So I feel like, and sometimes it takes a minute to find the right one. And I feel like that's okay. And that would kind of be, for me, that would be what I would recommend for people. That's what I think through. For me, a person being a Christian is important, or they need to have an understanding of my Christian worldview, even if they aren't. Does that make sense?
I get it.
Because if not, we're going to be talking about certain things, and you're going to be asking me to do something that's against my value system. And I feel like the Christian value system isn't just right; it's better. It's better for me,
right?
That's good.
So I need somebody who respects that, who's not like calling that into question. Well, why do you feel like you have to forgive? Okay, no, this is not going to work. Yeah, I'm not going to argue that with you. So that's kind of where I am. All right, Dakari?
Cool. Well, Brandon has a more lighter question. Brandon asks, he says, can you think of a movie title currently that best describes your life right now?
American Gangster. That's an old one. The one with Denzel?
I love it.
American Gangster?
Yes.
Best
not because I'm a gangster, not because I'm selling drugs.
Because on what episode you told us you had thug life tatted?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are you Denzel and right now in the movie? Which one are you?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm Denzel. I'm Denzel. No, not Denzel like engaging in illegal activity, but in the sense that I want to make a major impact, but stay under the radar to some degree.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to live an ostentatious life. It's my commitment. You won't know who I know. You won't know who I'm helping because I'm never going to post it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to brag about it. And no shade on people who do that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to see like me unless they post it. You're not going to see like me and celebrity pics on my feed and all of that kind of stuff. So for me, it's like, I want to make a major impact, but I want to live under the radar.
I got it.
So I don't know. So that's where I am. Don't wear the chinchilla.
Right.
$50,000 alpaca.
Yeah. So American Gangster.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question. This is
Mhm.
the last one. This is from Kyle. Kyle says, my wife and I recently had our first child. Congratulations. And our lives have changed, but I'm struggling to keep the fire and desire, if you know what I mean, and encourage her to be open to date nights. Any advice for married couples continue the spice with a child?
This is Kyle.
Kyle.
That was it.
Mhm.
I don't know. Kyle kind of confirmed some of the stuff we were talking about in the early part of this podcast.
I'm glad you
Kyle,
got the
I don't know if this is helping. I don't know if this is helping, Kyle.
The fact that we are all on the same page with it, but we didn't say it, it's just interesting.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
so I think this is potentially a little different though. So I do think men have to give women a little grace here because there are things that happen psychologically sometimes, sometimes physically, but also psychologically that happen that shift when a woman gives birth to a child.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I've never been through that. And it's one of those things that I believe you shouldn't judge if you haven't gone through it. You know what I mean? Like, and I've said this about relationships. Relationships take more than love. Love is not enough. Rarely do people stand at the altar and say those vows and they don't mean it.
Right.
But half of the relationships don't work out. So love's just, it's not enough. Grace and mercy.
That's it.
Is also important. And I think I don't feel like there's like a one-fit-all solution for something like this, but I do know like empathy and understanding and trying to kind of getting into her world is going to be really important. How are you feeling? How do you feel about you? Do you even feel? So if he's talking about intimacy, like, do you feel like you've lost that part of you? Have you changed in a way where the things I used to do to meet your needs emotionally no longer meet your needs?
Yeah.
So now it's like if you got, let's say if her dominant love language was like words of affirmation and quality time, and you give birth to a baby, that changed your whole life. Her love language now might shift to acts of service.
Yep.
You know, it's like you help me take care of the kid or you. So I feel like kind of getting into her world to figure out what's going on emotionally with you is going to be important because if not, like I'll write a prescription for something and I don't know the diagnosis. So that's why I don't want to give this blanket answer because you got to figure out what's going on. You got to get in her world and figure out what's going on with her. And then you can come up with a strategy to kind of do that. Because I feel like, especially if you're talking about intimacy, what you don't want in a marriage, like with intimacy, you don't want compliance.
Right.
You don't want, let me just do this because, you know, I know you need me to do this for you. You know? Yeah, I don't think that's what men want. You know, men want to be wanted also.
Absolutely.
In that way. And so I think he's kind of got to get into her world and got to be a little patient because she might be in the process where she can't even label right now what's actually going on with her. You know, sometimes you feel stuff and you don't quite know what's going on with yourself and you can't articulate that to someone else. So to me, that's where I'm going to tell them to start because I feel like meeting your wife's needs emotionally in that way, if you're a believer, if you're a Christian, that should kind of be your first priority over and above just getting stuff back to where, like spicy, where you want it to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of my
Wow, that was a great
That was good.
answer.
my
Man,
2
we got
cent.
so much content with this stuff.
That's my
Yeah.
2 cent there. But yo, those are great questions, and keep sending these questions in. Remember, podcast at DariusDaniels.com. And some of you are about to really soon start receiving responses from us, because we want to set some of you up. Come live right here via Zoom and ask your question. I think it's going to be great, and we're really excited about what's happening with this podcast. Hey, your support means the world to me. We want to engage in conversations in faith, life, and culture for your transformation. We want this to be a show of edutainment, and we want to help as many people as possible. So, man, download episodes, like it, share it, spread the word. And we're going to see you next time right here on the Darius Daniels Podcast.